Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and as the ill-fated society is to blame once again, it is time to conclude all of Chris's societorial articles on the Quickie, and, well, let's just say we live in a society, and a society is great because it has people from all corners of the earth, of every race, creed, sexuality, persuasion, and weight. There's probably a lot more that goes into this, but there is every single type of person that could possibly exist. And I hope Chris was prepared for the race, the human race. Or, well, considering this is the first thing that comes down, I suppose that any attempt at involving any sort of poetic merit to this whatsoever was not really worth it. So, here we go. So, I never really had anything against race or people. I never really did. I have nothing against black people or anyone else of other countries. Chris, while talking to Bravery Jerk in 2016, in spite of previous questionable depictions of race in his comics and videos. Yeah, that's like the first thing we're just gonna have to straight up get out of the way, ladies and gentlemen. Is the fact that you could say years in advance that you never had an issue, but then why did you do the things that you did in the first place? If your view was to be tolerant, and if in Chris's view he was meant to write a comic aimed for children, then why would he do the things that he did? Why have you ever watched Sesame Street and done anything like that? Like, fun story. Well, actually, no, I'd say it doesn't mean anything. So let's keep going. The race of people is often considered a sensitive topic, a poor match for Chris, with his lack of social tact and tendency to take pop culture stereotypes literally. While Chris doesn't seem to hold deeply bigoted views or have irrational hatred toward people that aren't white, or at least not on the same levels as views on homosexuals, people with Asperger's syndrome, and jerks generally, he has been remarkably tone-deaf when talking about or portraying minorities in his comics and videos. The Miscreants group of trolls used race as ammunition to mock and manipulate Chris. And because Chris is, well, Chris, it leads to things like this. Yeah. Chris and stereotypes. Now, I will say, actually, funny enough, I'll just make a very quick point about this, is that for about 5 years now, I've argued the idea that there is no such thing as a stereotype. What there is what somebody chooses to portray a certain minority or a group as, and for people to take it as gospel. It is about what is perceived via another person, as opposed to what universally counts as a stereotype. Because, consider that a bit of an oddity, if you will, but again, I refuse to believe in the concept of stereotypes. I just believe that if that's what people choose to do, then that's on them. It's not on the people that they portray, because that's not particularly fair or accurate. Chris's views of other cultures can also be traced on the television that he watches, such as the typical Adult Swim cartoon, which includes gratuitous use of stereotype-based humour. Blacks. Chris has been widely considered to be racist against black people since it was learned that his highly specific criteria for a sweetheart included whiteness and specifically excludes blackness. Chris tells not this to trolls, but to black boyfriend-free girls in real life, that they do not meet his standard criteria for a female companion to their faces. Yeah, and Chris says he hasn't got an issue with race. You may argue with the idea is that Chris saw his future daughter Crystal as being white, but I would also argue the case that if Chris ever thought he was ever going to get with a woman at all, let alone have a child, then what should it matter what the colour of somebody's skin is? His stated reason for not being interested in white means, yeah, that's exactly what I said. Trolls quickly coined a quick summary of Chris's criteria for a boyfriend-free girl, much to his chagrin, even though he previously approved of a notable piece of fan art with the phrase included prominently. This is essentially accurate, for example, on Chris's profile at the Hook Cafe, he says that smokers, overweights, blacks, and liars need not apply. On the less discriminatory side, Chris also has stated that he doesn't hate men who have black girlfriends, and doesn't consider them jerks. So Chris may think that it'll increase his chances of finding a white boyfriend-free girl, because he's like, 5% more tolerant now for some reason? Or is it only just because they're not available anyway, because, they're already in a relationship, so Chris couldn't be in the conversation if he tried? Some teenage black kids frequented the game place. Chris picked on them and acted like they wanted to steal from him, hiding his stuff when they were nearby. The official reason Chris got permanently banned from the game place was getting into a shouting match with one of these children. Chris also once argued with a huge black guy named TJ while playing Yu-Gi-Oh! When they started talking about how Chris would never get laid. Chris yelled, "I'm going to smack your effing face down," as TJ stood up like he was going to beat Chris's ass. Chris shrunk and whimpered, I mean your face down, monster." I can't lie to Chris, that's about the best way to, get around this, but so... It's probably one of the most rare moments of social tact that Chris actually had available to his surroundings, but that's probably also the last. He does an impression of the stereotypical black accent, which he apparently confuses with the Jamaican accent in Mumble Chat number 4. When Chris talked on the phone to Jackie's boyfriend Lars, he tried to bridge the gap between their different races by speaking in Ebonics, including referring to himself as the word, and making statements like, "I enjoy the TV shows I get from the black man, including The Jeffersons and Bill Cosby, and Sanford Son, and all of them." Yeah, when did, I know that the accusations of Bill Cosby didn't really come out until, the mid-2010s, but... yeah, I never watched Bill Cosby before that. The closest thing I ever came to watching Bill Cosby was watching Lil Bill when I was, 3 to 5 years old. That was, the closest I got to actually watching anything by Bill Cosby, so... yeah. That was over 20 years ago, man, damn. On the 27th of June 2012, Chris posted in Facebook a photo of a black woman at McDonald's who he said discriminated against him and demanded people not to go there, and if they do, to throw newspaper in the damn old bitchy black woman's face. Chris should have just changed his name to Karen by this point. It suits his lifestyle in many ways. In 2014, when Chris was infatuated with Catherine, he had a romantic rival by the name of Colin. He sent a message describing the light shining off of Colin's head in a photo as poo light. In 2016, Chris was asked by Bravery Jerk what his opinion on the Black Lives Matter movement was. Chris seemingly had never heard of the movement, saying, I have not heard of that. Well, Black Lives Matter, it sounds like it's, maybe black people sounds like they're having trouble, but I feel that, to help any person in general, regardless of race, whatever, I mean, for the, Black Lives Forever. I mean, I'll give Chris that. I mean, if Chris says he's never heard of Black Lives Matter, that's not a too bad way to put it. But I suppose, again, 2016, it was very different from when Chris was 6 years younger and stuff like that. So there's that. Asians. In the comics, Chris portrays Punchy Sonichu as a kung fu master with, I'm not saying that, raised in a dojo. When a fan criticized this stereotyping, Chris claimed that Punchy was not of Asian origin. Outside of the comic, Chris also misattributes the origin of kung fu to Japan. No, it comes from China. I mean, Chris, the song literally is... everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lighting. It's an ancient Chinese art. I mean, don't give me that look. That is literally what it is in the song. Look it up as well. It's a staple of 1970s pop music. In spite of itself. He does a racist impression of a Chinese person and claims Japanese and Chinese people... Fucking hell, Chris. He claims Japanese and Chinese people sound the... Fuck me. You know what? You know what's fucked up about this? Is that at my day job, I actually converse with a lot of Chinese, a lot of Filipino, Indonesian, Japanese, and a lot of other Polynesian races when I'm at work, and actually they are all very, very distinct. Trust me, this is the sort of bullshit you hear from somebody who literally does not know anybody outside of their own front door. I'm not even joking. Like, are you, Chris? I don't know why anybody would be prompted to say that. Well, because Chris just thinks it's either funny or maybe he didn't mean it in the meanest. Who knows? In a leaked series of emails, it is shown that Chris simply does not seem to know that China and Japan are not the same, as he calls the Japanese account Chinese, failing to realize that they are separate countries with different governments, languages, writing systems, and currencies. Okay, hang on. Quick timeout. Didn't Chris do some sort of high school paper on World War II in which he somehow described the Japanese and Americans as two boxers on the opposite side of a multi-thousand side ring or something like that? Didn't Chris it was Chris confused Manchuria with for something else, or I know again that's just down to Chris's strange, innocuous nature with how the hell history works. So I can't. That is I am stunned is the word I'm going for. Stunned. I'm absolutely stunned. In Chris Calls Clyde Out, Chris pretends to be Clyde Cash while doing an imitation of an Asian accent. Yes, that's true. And to be honest, yeah, since we know... Well, let's just check this out. Oh, that's a good start. Chris trying to squint his eyes and showcase that he still actually has teeth. We might as well watch it.
Oh, Mr. Clyde. I have a bit of a message for you in response to the one you sent to me recently. Yeah, basically this is the impression I got from your message.
Oh, look at me! I feel like a city man! Look at me! Don't look at my city, bro! Look at my city! I am the troll! I should be trolling! I should be trolling against everybody! Look at me! I'm some kind of Italian or something! I can be more lame! You want me to be more lame? I'll be more lame! I did the city walk! And I got a city walk! Look at my city walk!
Okay, maybe I get... okay, whatever. That's... Well, yeah. That's Chris's... That was Chris's attitude towards actually trying to take a stand against someone for something wrong that they did, is literally just giving them exactly what they wanted. In his real life, in a reference to Clyde's Asian ancestry, so it was done intentionally to harm him, right? And Chris says he doesn't have tolerance issues. In his real life dealings, Chris seems to have a positive or at least a neutral view toward Asians. Most of the time, he has stated that he would not exclude Asian women from his love quest, and at one point believed Emily to be part Asian. Chris appears to believe that is an actual Asian name, rather than a racially insensitive mockery of the Chinese language. Moving on. Can we go back instead? Actually, I'm bored. As stated in the main article, despite claiming to have at least one Cherokean ancestor, Chris is completely ignorant of Native American culture. However, unlike other minorities, Chris's opinions and representation of Native Americans are a misguided expression of pride for his heritage. In Sonichu 2, Episode 7, Chris tries to tie in his Cherokean heritage with Sonichu lore. he depicts Cherokee characters in his work as white-skinned and blue-eyed, and wearing ancient Roman-style armor. Joseph Smith would be proud. The Wasabi clan, unsurprisingly, also bear no resemblance to Native Americans. The Wasabi rival is, once again, very Caucasian-looking, and he wears an orange robe and a brightly coloured hat, vaguely resembling a meteor. This has led multiple commentators to say he looks more like the Pope than a Native American figure. Chris has also embodied this ignorance of Native American culture in a more physical form. For a brief time, Chris blurred his gender roles and began to collect and customize My Little Pony dolls. One of the dolls he crafted was the infamous Cherokee-chan, a Native American pony clearly based upon himself. While there is nothing overtly racist about this abomination, it is probably not how Native Americans want to be represented. In the end, Cherokee-chan is just another Mary Sue for Chris, and pales, pun not intended, in comparison to Chris's most infamous portrayal of Native Americans. Chris attempted to emulate what he perceives as Native American culture in a war paint video. You know what, rather than describing it, I think we should just watch it because, well, there's the Megatron pistol, there's the war paint, and here is Chris. Enjoy.
Calling all trolls! Calling all trolls! We are at war! This is war! I will not stand idly by while you take heed and curse my friends and my family. For you have dishonored me, and I will not stand for it. As I stand upon my native Cherokee heritage, I will hunt you down, you damn dirty trolls. This is war. Put down your wares and bring yourselves unto me.
Now, again, I know what you're thinking. I didn't remember at any point Native Americans using guns. I didn't remember Native Americans using muscle bras. I didn't remember Native Americans necessarily being hoarders quite to this extent. And I certainly didn't remember Native Americans having muscle bras and war paint. What do you mean war paint? This isn't a war. This isn't even handbags at dawn. So, no, we're not going into that. Jews. I hope that God will forgive you for being so heartless and cruel, Michael Snyder. Also with He Probably Will by Michael Snyder himself. Near the beginning of Chris's unsuccessful attempt in April 2010 to be unbanned from the gameplace, he felt the need to point out the possibility that Michael Snyder was Jewish. Why, I have no idea, using his last name as a point of reference. Snyder is a common Dutch name meaning tailor. It happens to be similar to the German surname Schneider, which is sometimes used by Jews. After failing to convince Snyder to lift the ban, Chris angrily called him a Jew and bolted out of the store, seemingly belying his claim to have no ill will towards the Jewish people, despite the fact that... Why did he say it? In a later video, Chris appears to restrain himself from calling Snyder a greedy Jew. In an email to Katie Bay, he refers to Snyder as a son of a bitch Jew and a pig-headed stubborn Jew. This probably is more so a misguided attempt to mimic Eric Cartman than the result of any deep-seated anti-Semitism. But because, again, if Chris actually went out of his way to explain that he was imitating Eric Cartman and deciding not to come across as anti-Semitic, borderline on people like Johann von Ribbentrop, but unfortunately because Chris is that sort of person, I suppose, no, Eric Cartman's probably even more evil than Ribbentrop. What am I even talking about? Actually, no, what the hell am I talking about? No, Ribbentrop was far, far worse. It should be noted that Snyder once clarified in a YouTube comment that he is not Jewish, and also that Chris took to using Jew like a curse word because anything directed at blacks nearly got him assaulted in retribution by patrons. Chris finally apologized for insulting Michael on the 31st of March 2018 after a 23andMe test showed that he himself had 0.1% Ashkenazian Jewish ancestry. He characterized this as a surprise. As of 2020, his 23andMe results no longer included Jewish ancestry. So I don't really know where this even came up in the first place, but whatever. Funnily enough, according to Chris's list of Adam and Eve purchases, he had purchased Nina Hartley's Guide to Sex Toys, a pornographic video starring the titular porn star, who just so happened to be a Jewish atheist. Whether Chris knew or cared about the fact he was masturbating to a woman whose race/beliefs he showed such a prejudice to remains unknown. Also, Chris has used the Yiddish phrase oy vey on occasion, though it's not uncommon for that phrase to be used outside of Jewish circles. Chris probably picked up on it from his parents or from shows like Rugrats and The Simpsons. Hispanics. Now, considering we've actually covered a lot of Chris's views towards the Spanish language before, I'll keep this relatively short, because outside of his rather tenuous grasp of the Spanish language, Chris has treated a somewhat racist caricature in the form of Espanolic. It's a grass-type Pokemon that resembles an anthropomorphized sombrero, in front of what appears to be the flag of Bolivia or Ghana. And its main attack is confusing its enemies with its strange language. Its evolved form, Vegaton, has an attack called the Spanish Fly that puts its enemies to sleep. Hilariously enough, Nintendo would later create similar Pokemon named Lombre and Ludicolo, which, despite being obvious stereotypes, were handled far more tactfully than Chris ever could hope to do. You're not kidding, Lombre was literally a very small guy with like a lily pond for a hat and seemed to have like a very long mustache for what it is. You could have said it was 6 years old and it would have had a mustache, probably that would have stretched to the floor. So far, the only Hispanic characters in his comics is Heather Iglesias, the lesbian nanny of Sonichu and Rosechu's children, and then Chris's children. Chris is probably trying to be inclusive here, but he isn't creative or intelligent enough to think of anything besides a stereotypical occupation for Hispanic women. It also does not help her sentences are random mixes of Spanish and English, and no, not by throwing in a random word or two of Spanish into her sentences, but switching from English phrases to Spanish midway in her sentences, which appear to be Google translated. It is worth noting that Chris sometimes refers to people of Latin American descent as Spanish. This is not unheard of, especially among older generations, but it is much less common than the terms Hispanic or Latino. Chris has shown in the past a willingness to befriend and date Hispanics. Indians. When the Gamer from Mars took Chris out to eat at an Indian restaurant during the filming of The Chris Chan Conspiracy, Chris blurted out one-liners from The Simpsons character Apu Nahasapima Petalon, complete with a stereotypical Indian accent. Because, despite the fact that Chris was in his late 30s when this happened, who am I kidding? You know the drill by now. Chris thinks he's being funny, he's not being funny, and Chris should have known far better than not to try and attempt to be funny, or rather just not say anything at all. Much to the embarrassment and disapproval of his hosts. Oh, you know what? Again, since we did it for the others, we may as well do it as well. Let's get this over with. Okay, the Gamer from Mars must have really felt like where is it? Oh, here it is.
I want everything about.
Let's see, where can we find it somewhere? Actually, no, it's not even there. Yeah, never mind. That I tried. Despite that, Chris insisted on belting out another "Welcome to Quickie Mart" line before they sat down to eat, oblivious to the fact that he could have offended somebody. Turdy Jerk from Off Target has a vaguely South Asian appearance, and the name also may be based on a stereotype of an Indian accent. I have no real point of reference to this. I mean, I sadly don't. Sadly. Other white ethnicities and cultures. Chris has not shown outright malevolence towards other white cultures, but it is often ignorant of their customs and nations. In Tito Got No Luck Against We Brits, Irish and Scots, for example, Chris plays an Irish song while wearing a kilt and pretending to be Scottish, then mentions a shillelagh. Chris has an extremely basic idea on Eastern Europe and Russia. Sylvana was given a supposedly Russian accent midway through the comic for no discernible reason, although the way it was written made it look like a German accent instead. Maybe Sylvana was meant to be like the Baroness from G.I. Joe or something. But then again, the Baroness was German, so I don't know. Troll manipulation. This is, of course, from the infamous Blue Spike call. So, yeah, if you want to know what that was. In the Julie Reveals Herself call, Blue Spike coerced Chris into saying the N-word, and Chris attempted to substitute the N-word instead. But Blue Spike insisted, and Chris gave in. The term, the N-word, became an infamous quickism. In a June 2009 video, Chris uploaded for Julie called Don't Trust Any, which was a cover of the song Don't Trust Them Over There from the Boondocks. While Chris attempted to make it homophobic, because that was going to make Chris look more popular, he still kept many of the racist lyrics from the original song and even repeated the N-word on 3 different occasions in the song. You know what? Why is that even troll manipulation? Why did Chris even make that video? Why? What was the point? I don't know. Chris called Surfshark Tito the N-word on video and in email. Notably, he never used the term in this context either before or after his interaction with Tito, who is not even depicted as being a black person, suggesting Chris was manipulated by trolls behind the scenes into using that word. In Jackie Emails 14, Sweetheart Jackie asked Chris to dress up as Mr. Popo on video, a character from Dragon Ball, with black skin, red lips, and a turban, while singing, "You ain't seen no saints on a fiddle, no saints on a fiddle like this." Chris complied because he's a fucking idiot, though he was aware the costume would appear like blackface, and placed a disclaimer stating that this video presentation is not meant to make fun of the blacks or the Hindus. You may say that's the best thing Chris could have done outside of, just not making the video at all, but, well, here it is. It's about as awkward as it gets.
Hello, I have glasses for a genie, Mr. Popo. I tell you a story. It is a good story. You will enjoy story. Once there was this boy who was born with some autism and yet made a few friends, but after his high school years he lost his friends and was so tortured. No saints on the fiddle like this. Ain't no saints on the fiddle. No saints on the fiddle like this. A song yo day wah wah, ho ho hey ya ho. A song yo day wah wah, ho ho hey ya ho. Ain't no saints on the fiddle. No saints on the fiddle like this. Ain't no saints on the fiddle. No saints on the fiddle like this. A song yo day wah wah, ho ho hey ya ho. A song yo day wah wah, ho ho hey ya ho. Happy loving between me and Jackie. I love you, sweetheart. Boing.
I know you're probably gonna get sick of me saying this, but I'm just gonna say this just for the record right now, is that it really goes to show you how desperate Chris, or determined he was, to lose his virginity this way. And you've got to admire how much Chris truly valued this going this far. Certainly more than Chris ever valued his dignity, that's for sure. During the Idea Guy saga, Chris was manipulated into dressing up as a gopnik, bottle of vodka included, while spouting the phrase, "a new..." I don't know if this is like, and over again, in reference to the Stalker games which Joshua was obsessed with. Although, like many things during that saga, the whole meme probably flew completely over Chris's head, and was actually led to believe that the chant was Cherokean instead. But wait, I hear you say, Chris not being a racist? And I am not racist, and I like Jews. Blacks are good people too. Chris in the disclaimer for the Mr. Popo video. Chris does not want to be considered a racist. He claims to respect blacks as equals, saying that in Quickville they can even vote. Or, if they can help him get his inane and idiotic video game made, he also genuinely likes two black actors, Keenan and Kel. He did mention more than once that the reason he doesn't want black girls, but any other race is okay, is because he thinks God, told him that his future daughter Crystal must be white, too. In an IRC chat, Chris said he has no problem with dating an Asian. Later, in Mailbag... How lucky for them, eh? In Mailbag 35, he wrote he would date Asian, Native, or Hispanic women as well as women of any other countries, except the ones being black. Chris's ethnic background. Influenced by his parents' claims, Chris has long asserted that he is of primary English descent, with some Cherokee heritage on Bob's side and some French heritage on Bob's. However, in March 2018, the Idea Guys had Chris apply for a DNA test from 23andMe to determine his ancestry, which showed he was of 100% European genetic background, with slightly over half of this being British and most of the rest from across northwestern Europe. The test also indicated that Chris had a trace amount less than 0.1% of Ashkenazian Jewish ancestry. Chris was also led to believe that he had black ancestry because his parental hallograph lineage, like all human lineages, began in Africa. As a matter of fact, both his paternal and maternal hallographs point to European origin. As a result, Chris declared that he was fully observant of his Jewish ancestry. How much of his Jewish, or how much of how much of Judaism Chris really knows is also up for is questionable as well. That's the word I was looking for. And that he was black too. No, you're not, Chris. He apologized for his past offensiveness regarding Jews and black people. Sometime between 2018 and 2020, Chris's 23andMe results were updated. They now show no Jewish ancestry whatsoever, showing a somewhat larger component of Italian ancestry instead. Starting to question the actual legitimacy of 23andMe for all this, if I'm being completely honest. They also show that he is of 0.1% Siberian ancestry, possibly the sign of a distant Native American ancestor, as North Asian and Native American populations are closely related. Chris has yet to comment on these new results. In January of 2023, Chris's 23andMe results were updated again. They showed a larger component of Scandinavian and broadly Northwestern European ancestry, increased 0.1% of Italian, and the rest of Northwestern Europe was decreased by less than 2%. A Siberian ancestry increased by 0.1%, and it was also added to Chris had 0.1% of unassigned ancestry. Maybe autism one day will become recognized as its own nation, and unassigned will probably be the way to put it. Minority characters in Sonichu. Chris's attempts to add in characters of various races and religions with decidedly mixed results. Many of his non-white characters are one-dimensional or barely relevant, but then again, so is every white one who isn't Chris in his world full of rainbow hedgehogs. Virtually all black characters are depicted as criminals, villains, or undesirables. The ones that aren't so lucky are treated like crap by the other characters or used in race-related jokes. In the mailbag, when Chris is confronted about the lack of minorities in his comics, he claims that all of his electric hedgehog Pokemon are considered minorities. in Quickville, implying that he completely missed the point of the question. Despite being minorities, the Electric Hedgehog Pokemon group never experiences discrimination nor prejudices in the comics. That's save for another minority in Quickville. Chris tolerated different renditions in July 2020. By the way, this is a list of all of Chris's minority characters. Kevin, Jewish, good, but immature. Ancient leader of the Cherokee clan, Native American, lawful, good. Wasabi rival, Native American, evil. Queen of the Cherokee clan, Native American, good, probably the whitest of all Native American characters in the comics, as she's not only blue-eyed, but also blonde. B. Manajerk, black, evil. A villain based off a real-life encounter, the B most likely stands for black. The name was coined so that Chris could distinguish him from other Manajerks. This is quite similar to the way American black superheroes were named in the 1950s and 60s. Barack Obama, half black, half Arab. A cameo for the sake of a race-related joke. Bob told Chris a racist joke about then Senator Obama, which Chris illustrated within the pages of Sonichu issue 8. Chris removed the joke after Obama won the election, but he probably only did that because he respects Obama now. Blake, black, evil, turned good. A villain turned positive, aligned bad boy. Black Sonichu, or Black Chew, whose name was later changed to Blake, was originally a villain, but switched sides because he's a recolor of Shadow the Hedgehog. In Sonichu 11, which were uploaded in 2015, Blake is mistaken as black, being wished as Happy Kwanzaa brother from an African American who goes on an angry rant about how his skin is not. I'm okay. You know what? That's it. I've had enough of this. I'm done with this. It's you know what I think's kind of like fucked, really fucked about literally all of this is the fact that the only reason why I suspect Chris did half the things he said is because he either thought he was trying to get one over on people by striking at somewhere where he knew it was going to hurt people, and then when it comes to his comics, it was just a way to just, as though, again, when you're doing a comic book, you have the fortune, the blessing that, you can, use things to depict, drawings, and there are ways you can distinguish between people just by using your eyes. But Chris, oh god, okay, you know what? I'm done with this. I don't want to tolerate Chris's intolerance or his sense of humor for literally another second. So stick a fork in me. I'm done. I'll see you guys later. Peace out. See you tomorrow.